I'd like to welcome all of you and thank you for attending this celebration of 160 years of debate on the campus of the University of Iowa. We are the first student program and we are the oldest student program on campus. So you're all part of a history and a legacy of success. And I want to thank all of you for continuing that, making Dave and I look good and Brian look extraordinarily good. Tonight we have 75 people will be celebrating with us this weekend and representing over 8 decades of debaters at the University of Iowa. And it spans 9 decades. We're just missing 1960. So tonight we have an impressive assemblage of alumni in the audience. We have National Debate Tournament champions, Cross-Examination Debate Association national champions, NDT top speakers, NDT finalists, debater and graduate student coaches of the year, debate history makers like Virginia Stafford, Nathan Coco, and Chuck Smith, groundbreaking theorists in debate practices like Dale Herbeck, past directors and coaches of the program, invitational tournament champions, ELIM participants, speaker award winners, and international debaters. We have titans in the field of finance and investment, trailblazers in innovation and engineering, leaders in business and the academy, distinguished attorneys, drivers of public policy, award-winning scholars, and influential professors. This illustrious group is evidence of the tradition of the A. Craig Baird Debate Forum being one of excellence in winning and learning. Tonight marks the beginning of the process to capture the history of Iowa debate. Just as last night's speaker series event showcased the value of debate education, creating an archival memory of the program provides meaningful information illustrating how debate advances student achievement and contributes to the core values of the University of Iowa. Creating an institutional memory reconnects alumni to the program and to the university, while providing the groundwork in cross-generational relationships for instilling the Baird tradition in its members. It forms the foundation to the answer of the question, why debate at Iowa matters. We will launch tonight's testimonial event with the opening remarks from President Barbara Wilson. On July 15th of this year, President Wilson began her term as the 22nd president of the University of Iowa, joining the likes of Baird alum like Virgil Hancher. With a bachelor's degree in journalism, a master's and PhD in communication arts, 21 years of instructing students in the theory and practice of communication, chairing the Department of Communications at Urbana-Champaign, in years of service in executive positions of leadership in higher education, it seems natural that she would find herself amongst a bunch of debaters. Her presence here is testament to Iowa debate's reputation of excellence, one in which you are all a part of building. Please welcome President Wilson.
Thank you so much, Paul. It's really a pleasure to be here this evening. I was originally supposed to be heading to Northwestern for a particular game tomorrow, and that all got changed at the last minute. And when I saw that happen, I said to my assistant, I think I have to go to this debate reunion given my roots and my origin. Many of you may know I've been here now for 3 months. I've celebrated my 3-month anniversary just about a week ago. It's been a whirlwind. I've had a fabulous 3 months. I'm learning a lot about this amazing institution and really feeling quite honored to be in this position and have this opportunity, in spite of the fact that we're in the middle of a global pandemic. If we put that aside, I would say things are doing really well here, but that's a harder nut to crack. But really, it's been just great, and it's been a pleasure to learn about all the amazing jewels of this university that I had no idea about when I interviewed for the position, and I would include this debate program as one of those jewels. I was checking over the records, and I think the website actually says that the debate team has won more national titles than anything other than wrestling at the University of Iowa. And so there you go Hawks. And I just want to make a comment about that because I heard that and I said, could that be true? I mean, I don't want to say that if that's not true. Not that I doubt your website, okay? But so I checked with my folks in our institutional research shop, and sure enough, they called over to athletics, and Gary Barta confirmed that there is no other activity on this campus other than wrestling that has more national championships than debate. So congratulations to this amazing program with this huge legacy. Yeah. It's just wonderful to be here this evening. I'm not going to stay the whole night and listen to all of your stories because I won't understand them anyway, but I really did want, and I want you to be free to say whatever it is you're going to say without the president in the room, I guess. But I'm really honored to be here and to recognize David and his retirement, 30-year record of success. What a phenomenal legacy to this institution. So congratulations to you. And really to all the students in the room. I spoke to several of our students back in the corner. I think I took them off guard and walked up and said, okay, well, so are you part of the team? And what do you do? And what are you majoring in? And I just heard what an amazing group of students that we attract to this program and how smart they are. Oh my goodness. And what they're focusing on this year and how they're making us proud as they go out and debate on a really important topic, antitrust issues, which, as we know, are getting a lot of attention these days, especially in the arena of technology and social media. So, but I am a communications scholar by training, and my heritage and background is communication. And so when I went around the boards and I saw Sam Becker up on one of the boards, I felt right at home. I remember visiting Iowa many, many years ago, and I went and met with Sam in the Comm Studies building, because he was really, in a way, a forefather for the area of research that I do, media effects, and he made me feel so at home and so welcome. I didn't end up coming here for a faculty position, but it's kind of ironic that many, many, many years later, I'm here as the president of this fabulous institution, and I'm a tenured faculty member in Comm Studies now, even though I didn't get hired quite through the normal route of a tenured faculty member. So I'm just so grateful to all of you. I want to also acknowledge the Baird Debate Forum, which I think is a fabulous way to recruit students from high schools around the state in particular, and bring students from all backgrounds here to the University of Iowa. That's a huge commitment for us. We can boast this year's entering class 1 in 5 are first in family to go to college, 1 in 5 of our new students this year, and almost 20% are from underrepresented minority groups. So we have a huge commitment in the middle of the cornfields to ensure that we're accessible, available, and approachable, and that we welcome students from all backgrounds, and we're going to transform their lives when they come here, as I hope many of you alums feel you had that kind of experience when you were here. So thank you for inviting me. Have fun tonight. Thank you to all the donors in the room. Your gifts mean so much to a program like this. Keep supporting Iowa Debate. We will keep making you proud, right, students? And we'll keep bringing you back for these kinds of invitations and wonderful events. So thanks so much, Paul, and thank you, everyone. And go Hawks!
Our first speaker tonight will be Virginia Stafford. Ginny is one of Dr. Baird's champion debaters. Having won the 1945 Western Conference Championships, her commitment to Iowa debate has spanned nearly 80 years. Former member of the Dean's Advisory Committee of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, she strongly advocated for the program. She sat on the 1990 Baird Reunion Committee, generating the foundation of the endowment which supplements university funding today. She endowed a scholarship that helps attract top recruits from across the state and the nation. Ginny was the keynote speaker at the 2015 National Debate Tournament hosted by Iowa, where she honored us with her experiences as a woman in debate in the 1940s. As some of those who mentioned after her speech said, I'm glad she rebelled back then. You remember she snuck out of the dorm? I'm glad she rebelled back then. It motivates me to honor her legacy and to continue to demand more for women in debate today. Ms. Stafford, the podium's yours. You have 2 minutes.
It's really a real pleasure to be here. For me, coming to the University of Iowa was rewarding, and especially rewarding to work with Craig Baird. He was a genius in working with high school students. I grew up in Burlington. Burlington was competitive. Boy, those towns down in the end of the state were tough in debate. And we liked to beat them, and we were pretty good at it. And we usually had a coach that was pretty good at it. And the only thing I wanted to do was come to the University of Iowa and work with Craig Baird. And for me, that was absolutely one of the high experiences of my life. Actually, I brought along some proof tonight. I have one son who is named Craig, and he's standing over there. I'm not going to report on the other 3 kids. I still believe in debate. I believe that this is something that the University of Iowa does as well as anyone, including Northwestern, where my husband went to school. I might disagree with me, but I also he died, and he has no more to say. I absolutely believe that the University of Iowa is the best school for debating, and let's keep it that way. That's what makes the University of Iowa a very special university, and an absolutely joy to be a graduate of the University of Iowa.
We debated in the mid-'70s. The early '70s were dominated by a couple of people. Roger Stetson, who was taken from us way too soon, a lawyer, remarkable. Roger was great. Ray was great too. He was a lawyer in Chicago. I got there in '76, debated with a couple of partners. There were a couple of programs that basically fed into Iowa in the '70s. That was Newton, it was Ottumwa. Burlington, I'm sorry, wasn't there. And Roosevelt from Des Moines, which is where Don Stanley came from. And in the mid-'70s at Iowa, Don Stanley was the center of debate. Don was the walrus. He was big. He was humorous. Never met something he couldn't do better. And so it was Don and Mark Dethridge who dominated the mid-'70s. I was a second team, first with Bob Breckenridge, and then with my good friend Greg Owens, who's in the back of the room and says he won't say a word tonight. We had coaches. Well, Bob Kemp was the head coach. And some of us were talking earlier tonight, and we can't remember a whole lot that Bob did at any tournament. He was just the head coach, and the assistant coaches did everything. My first year, we had I had a head coach that we went to Navi Nationals over at Evanston at Northwestern, who decided the best thing that he could do to prepare me for that night for the next day was to take me to Rush Street in Chicago. And we took a university vehicle and we spent the night on Rush Street, and then I came back and debated at Navi Nationals in Evanston. We had good coaches for a while. Steve Coach came after I left, but There was Ron Lee and Karen King. My most vivid memory, God, I still have 2.5 minutes.
I'll make a few comments.
She's going to cut it short in a minute. My most vivid memory of Karen was we were driving back from some tournament. It might have been Kentucky, might have been something else, but in those days you didn't have any idea what weather was. We're driving up the interstate, and I'm driving, and the car starts to do a 360. Then it does a 540, and we slide into the median. Karen gets out, just cussing me a blue stream that I put the car in the median. She steps up on the highway and lands right on her butt because it's freezing rain and there is no way any car should have been on that road. And they dragged us out of there. We drove a couple more miles and we ended up all of us in the same hotel room because that was the way, it was in those days. It was, if I would say those are my memories of that, the most important memory is that I met this remarkable woman, and we got married 40 years ago.
The one thing I would add is I think the value that Iowa Debate brought to the state of Iowa when we were debating was the connection between college debate and high school debate. All of us, and Greg said this too, and Steve said this too, every single weekend we were out judging high school debate. And we were encouraging high school debaters and giving them critiques and excellent judging that I don't think existed in other places, and I didn't realize it at the time. But we were out encouraging the next generation of debaters in a way that probably didn't happen in other places. And to me, that connection between what happened at the University of Iowa and what happened at Dowling and Ottumwa and Newton and the other places was really special.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. So
High school
thank
debate. High school debate in those days. The Des Moines Register used to have a half a page that had the poll for the upper class and the lower class of high schools, and that coaches voted on that every week, and it showed up. And it, whether you had won at the last tournament mattered, and whether or not we showed up and made sure that the tournaments
that the judging was good and expert and made a difference.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, the best part is still her.
Yeah, thank you.
Invited Nathan Coco, Carla Leeper, and Eric Epping to say a few words as well. We're stretching the definition of the 80s just a little bit, but given my 2 minutes, I would say this. James A. Baker III is credited with the phrase, prior preparation prevents poor performance. I knew that long before I ever heard of James A. Baker III, starting with Dale Herbeck, who's here tonight, and Carla Leeper, and then Dr. Dave. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to do the work. That's what I would say about Iowa Debate. That's what you learn if you came here.
There is no reason that I should be able to do what I'm doing today. If you look at all of the data in higher education, I was a first-generation college student. I came from a very low-income household. I came from a high school where 25% of the students went on to college. I went on and, went to law school, and then I got better. And then I went and got a PhD and coached a debate program, and now I'm an executive administrator at a university. And the reason is because I found the University of Iowa Debate. Every job that I've had, everything that I've done, the people have asked me, where did you learn to do that? Where did you learn to write? Where did you learn to research? Where did you learn to organize? Why are you a woman able to walk into a room full of men and manage the situation, right? It's because we had excellent role models in our situation. And I remember distinctly being in a room with a university president who will go nameless, who after I made a presentation to him, he said, this is what we need. We need to hire more people like you from these Ivy League schools, from the Harvards and the Princetons. Why can't we have them? And I said, I'm here. I'm sitting right here. Are you not looking at me? Do you not understand that I came from a Midwestern public university that produces really outstanding students? And so I can tell you honestly, I would not have done any of the things that I have done in my life if it were not for the people and the programs at the University of Iowa. And I'll tell, a very quick story. I think part of what I learned here was to struggle a little bit, because people sometimes take us for granted. The debate budget when I started was $12,000. That does not go very far. We had one team. We had 2 graduate students and Bob Kemp managing the program, and we were able to compete at a very high level, and it is because we had to struggle. But even at the end of the day, we got a first round at large bid my senior year, but to get it, we had to drive home from Northwestern in a blizzard with John Katsoulis leaning out of the car looking for the side of the road. And the reason that we had to get home was because we had to file the paperwork. This is, for those of you who are young, this is the days of snail mail, right? We had to FedEx our first round at large bid to the committee so that they would receive it. And we had gotten to the quarters of Northwestern, so that was gonna be the thing that got us over the top. But we even had to struggle to file the first round at large bid. And I think the fact that at Iowa, you can earn everything you ever wanted, but nothing is ever given to you, is maybe one of the most valuable lessons that I have ever received. But I am grateful every single day. There is not a day that goes by that I don't use something that I have learned here. And there is not a day that I am not grateful for the people that I worked with and the program that I have been a part of. And I am very proud to be an alum of the University of Iowa.
Okay, I've got about 6 minutes, so I can, given my speed, that'll allow me to make 3 or 4 arguments. I'm Nathan Coco. I was debater in the 80s, and it was a special time in my life to come to the University of Iowa. Like Carla, I came from a lower middle class family. First to go to college in my family. Was not a rigorous high school student, but I found my way to debate and found my way to the University of Iowa. It was when I came, Mr. Slappy, Paul Slappy, was the administrator for the program. A tremendous role model and friend and caretaker for all of us on the team. Dr. Hinksman was here maybe in his 2nd or 3rd year, so he was relatively new to this program, but of course had tremendous success every other place he had been. So for Mr. Slappy, having Dr. Dave here was the big selling point to my parents. I share the anecdote that Paul came to my house to convince my parents that I should come to the University of Iowa. And he said, we have probably the most successful and sought-after coach of any coach in intercollegiate debate in the country. His name is Dr. Hinksman. He's a genius. His team's won the national championship at Baylor, and so there's no better place for your son to come and be a competitive debater. And my father listened to all of that, and he said at the very end of it, he goes, are you saying my son's going to get a scholarship? And Mr. Slappy said, yes, he'll get a scholarship, and my parents said, okay, he'll be there. But in any event, it was fantastic. When I joined the team, most of the debaters were from Iowa, and so there were a lot of debaters that I competed with as a high school debater, including Chuck and Randall. Kerry and his partner Sean were a little bit older than us, so we didn't compete with them so much as they beat up on us. But what was interesting about it is, even though we knew each other well, we've been debating each other for years, we really weren't very good friends. In fact, you could say that maybe we didn't even like each other. I won't include Jeff in this because Jeff, actually, I did like him and we were friends. But in any event, we were all kind of thrown together, and it was so fantastic and so great. I learned how to become an excellent debater. Dr. Hinksman taught me how to be a competent student, including teaching me how to write, which has served me well over the years. And so whatever success I've had in my life, I attribute, like Carla said, to having the opportunity to be a part of this wonderful experience of Iowa debate. And the last thing I just want to mention, I think this is probably true for most of you, I don't remember so much the rounds, the tournaments, who we competed against, why we won or lost. which judge screwed us on that argument, or how we were robbed of this or that, What I really remember most about my debate experience was just the time spent with friends, the silliness, the shenanigans at hotels, the bad behavior, the good behavior, and that's really what made it special for me. It really was a family experience, and I cherish it.
Hi, my name is Eric Epping, and although I was officially a member of the A. Craig Baird Debate Forum from 1990 to 91, I was also one of those Iowa high schoolers in the 1980s who benefited from that association between the University of Iowa and Iowa high school debate. Having grown up in Cedar Rapids, that was being very close to the university definitely was the foundation that got me interested in debate and built that up and led ultimately to participation here at the university. I did want to share a story about one memory I have from my time in debate here at Iowa. I still remember the very first tournament at UNI, and at that time the team had grown from just a few people. We had enough people where Slappy chartered a bus for us to go up to UNI, and it was one of those university buses that had the University of Iowa written across the side, so I think very intentional. But I still remember driving up to the tournament in the bus, and as the bus stopped, the audio started and it played the Iowa fight song. And then following that, Slappy gave us a pep talk, which I don't remember much of the details, but I do remember it started, well, here we are at the University of no importance, and using that got us fired up for our first tournament of the year. But then what I remember was that after getting our pairings for the first round, we were up against the top speaker from the previous year. And unfortunately, that, of course, was a loss. And also, unfortunately, that may have been the beginning of a downhill slide for me for the rest of the year. But I definitely thoroughly enjoyed my time at the University of Iowa debate. And even though I only lasted 1 year and ended up moving on into medicine, and actually stayed here at the university for the last 30 years, and now I'm on faculty in the College of Medicine. Probably personally, the legacy of debate for myself is that for the last several years, every second-year medical and physician assistant student at the University of Iowa have had a required assignment to debate several different topics in healthcare, and so that's probably the one lasting legacy that I can attest to from my experience in Iowa debate. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Dave, and everyone else.
So I'm going to close with 2 fun facts, hopefully in 25 seconds. So for fun fact number 1, Dr. Epping is teaching my nephew, Ben Linden, this semester at the med school. How about that? I think I also have the distinction of being a coach's last freshman and first senior. I believe, Dale, I was your last freshman at the University of Iowa. And then most of you know, but in case you don't, I was Dave's first senior. And it's been a ride. Thank you for your investment in me and these guys and letting me participate with you in that and coach these guys. Thank you.
I heard earlier today that prior preparation prevents poor performance. So you're going to get a poor performance, is clearly what we know here. In any case, I want to say first of all, talk a little bit about the 90s in general, and then a little bit about Dr. Dave more specifically. But I think everybody knows that the 90s was a pretty badass decade for Iowa debate. Nathan was up here for the 80s, which is crazy because he and Chuck did one of the most amazing things that the debate world has known. He went 8-0 with every ballot picked up in the NDT to win the national championship. It hasn't been repeated many times. What is it, once now? Actually, was it just Northwestern in the 90s? Kentucky did it. All right. In any case, an amazing feat. We had the Copeland Award winners, we had the NDT top speaker, and now Andy's going to get up to later and say in the 2000s there was another NDT championship, but we all know that was still part of the 90s group, just to be clear. So yeah, like early 90s was awesome, that like 93 to 95 was I'll just call it hazy, a little hazy. and then solid throughout. Sorry, I'm one of the later ones. But I did want to say this in terms of debate in general, and then Dr. Dave's impact in particular. Debate, I say it to everybody, it absolutely changed my life. I went to law school, and you talk to all the other first years, and they would say to you, this is crazy, all these tests, you got to stay up late at night. And it was a joke. It was like, are you kidding me? You think this is hard? Have you ever been to the NDT? You don't sleep at all. All you do is prepare. Undoubtedly, debate is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I met the smartest people I have ever met in my life, and I don't think that there's any activity that throws that at you at all. I mean, you see people that are brilliant, and then now you go into the world, and these people are doing, not surprisingly, astonishing things. Now, Dr. Dave in particular, my first foray into meeting Dr. Dave was at the Dartmouth Debate Institute, where he had, by this time now, he's got all kinds of street cred with debate. He's done a bunch of things at the college circuit, and undoubtedly, he had a reputation that preceded him. Everybody, including the Institute staff, would roll out the red carpet for Dr. Dave. And I do remember distinctly one time I needed to begin researching, and I didn't know where to start. And somebody told me, well, just talk to Dr. Dave. I'm like, okay, well, he's not my lab leader. And they're like, yeah, but he knows everything. So I did find him, and I'm sure you don't remember this, Dr. Dave, but I found you in the Baker Library stacks, and I told you and like a wizard, you were just like, oh yeah, follow me. And you just walked right through the catacombs, got to the stack, and you're like, read this. And then, of course, I think the next thing you said is, and go to the periodicals and read every periodical. That's pretty much the Dr. Dave routine. And then by the time I was looking for the college to go to, Iowa was on the list. Iowa had just been in the NDT finals with a kid by the name of Corey Rayburn and Chris Mutel at that point. And I went to meet Dr. Dave on a recruiting trip, and guess what? It was a little late. It was a little late, but Paul Slappy was there. And Paul Slappy said to me, what are you here for, young man? Meeting Dr. Dave. Oh, when are you meeting him? And well, he's supposed to be here 15 minutes ago. Well, Dr. Dave's never late. He's never late, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, so that's when I learned Paul Slappy was a politician and a liar. But the point is my mom was with me, and Dr. Dave, he was one of the best recruiters because, unlike almost every other debate coach in the country, he was presentable to parents and very good at it. Very impressive from being, at Harvard Law. Like, it was really easy. But the truth of the matter, while he may not be on time all the time, the sweetest man, incredibly intelligent, and any of the parents and students knew it as soon as they saw it. And that's what compelled me to be at Iowa, and ultimately tons and tons of learning from him and others, Paul and others on the coaching staff. It changed my life. So thank you for that.
I'm like Nathan. I don't remember rounds I was in. I don't know I can't tell those stories. So I want to share my random list of, I would call them fun Dr. Dave memories, or just when I think about my time at Iowa in the 90s and Dr. Dave, in no particular order, the black Toyota Camry that was like always parked in the front spot of the International Center because you were there all the time. Your office at the International Center, which was filled with papers and tapes and God knows what else, floor to ceiling. All of the work weeks and lunches at Carlos O'Kelly's, so I think as people know, Dr. Dave's birthday was always during the work week. And so we'd go out to lunch at Carlos O'Kelly's. Is that even still around? Is there still Carlos O'Kelly's? Oh, maybe maybe later tonight. It's Dave's birthday, and we'll go. And Dr. Dave in his suit and tie with a sombrero on his head being serenaded by all of us. I have a very clear memory of running into Dr. Dave at the Old Capitol Mall, which, is that still here? Is that still a thing? Okay. And Roberta Flack's Where is the Love, light rock, song of the 70s is on, and Dr. Dave is walking toward me, and I wave at him, and he just walks right up and starts singing the song to me and serenading me in the middle of the mall. Like, I don't remember how you coached me in some round, but I do remember that. I remember getting to see Dr. Dave at his last NDT that was up in the Twin Cities, and it was such a joy to get to see you and to see the new crop of debaters. And in true Dr. Dave fashion, we kind of met in the big room. They still do the old school pairings and everything, and we were getting ready to see the team. And Dr. Dave said, okay, let me get my things together. Now this is 2018, 2019, and he grabs a big yellow Iowa Book and Supply bag that is filled with paper. I don't know if anything's on the paper, but where it's 2018, no one has any boxes anymore, but Dr. Dave has this big bag of printer paper that we had to bring to this round. So it was like everything old is new again. And I'll just say this, and I don't remember who it was that said it, but somebody once said, Dr. Dave has probably forgotten more than I will ever know. And I think when you stop and think about that for a minute, it's probably very true. I'm sure it's true for me, and I'm very grateful to you that you took your talents and you shared them with all of us, and we're all very grateful. So thank you.
Aaron did better than Trevor, obviously, in sharing the mic, but I love them both, clearly. Yeah, I know. I debated with Trevor for a long time, so I'm well aware of this. So my name is April Rathie. I am an example, actually, of a student who benefited from the University of Iowa debate program from high school through to college. I came out of Ottumwa, Iowa, benefiting from Bob Beisch and his guidance, as well as the guidance of a number of University of Iowa students who served as our coaches, because Bob definitely was not our coach. He definitely drove us, and he was a great chauffeur, and he yelled on our behalves, and he was the best cheerleader you could imagine, but he did not coach us, which was fine, because he brought lots of really talented people in from the University of Iowa to work with us. The University of Iowa, for me, in terms of debate, Dr. Hinksman recruited me. I was not sure I wanted to do debate in college. I was going into engineering, which is not a natural fit with debate, because you actually have to attend class, and you have to do homework, and you have to turn your homework in, and you have assignments, and you have tests, and they expect to see you in lab. You can't just disappear for 2 days once a week. And so there was always a challenge, but I loved my time on the debate team. And I have to say, for me, while it may not be an obvious connection, the ability to communicate, the ability to do research, the ability to, again, work in a room of men is very handy in the world of technology, because that's basically what we do every single day. And so people often ask, how did you get these skills? Where did they come from? And without a doubt, it was debate. It was the debate community that I was a part of. It was the people that I learned from. And it was the people that we were great friends with during that time. Again, I don't remember rounds. I don't remember, you'd have people peeking in the door. No. But it was the support, and everybody was always supportive, and that was probably the most meaningful. And I look back, we actually liked each other enough that we lived in a house together at one point. There were 8 of us, and it was insane. And we walked by it today. The house is still there, and I was like, that was my room, and there was a bird in it at one point, and it was insane, but we loved it. And it was so meaningful to be here today, to see everybody that's here, and to see all these people that I haven't seen for probably 20 years now. But thank you, Dr. Dave, for that time, for bringing me into debate, for supporting me, for supporting the team, and all the other students that you did over the years.
We're telling debate stories, not Paul Bella stories, so don't worry about it. So to contextualize this, I know many of you are students of the activity, but the aughts were the kind of the end of the blue tub era of policy debate. Like, if you remember when it started, there might have been, just handwritten notes, and then there were cards, and then ox boxes, and it went to tubs. And so if you see some of the pictures, I think they did a good job of editing them out. there are, your podium is not a podium, but instead people are debating on stacks of blue tubs. Those actually had evidence in them and research. And some of the skills that Dr. Dave brought, people have talked about his genius intellect, were, he couldn't keep a copier working. That was a very important skill in the early aughts. He knew how to get an Apple printer to work at 1 a.m., another important skill. But in addition to those skills that you don't traditionally associate with a debate coach, he led a team along with Paul and some of the other graduate assistants that in the early aughts, the era that I was there, had almost virtually unparalleled success. I'm not a history, I don't have the perfect history. I only looked at half the boards back there, right? But in the year 2000, Iowa won the Copeland Award. They won the Kentucky tournament. They were in the finals at Harvard and won a number of other tournaments. And then in 2001, we had multiple first-round bids. We won the NDT, finalists at many major tournaments, and a top speaker following in the footsteps of Chuck Smith and Corey Rayburn. Andy Ryan, my partner, was the top speaker at the NDT. And Dave, through those technical skills and also being, I think, the only person in America that simultaneously held a subscription to the Utne Reader and Mother Jones and Commentary and the National Review simultaneously, and little did he know, he probably gets strange political mail to this day because of it, was really instrumental, obviously, in helping both build those teams and sustain them through those weird times of the early aughts.
Good evening. Paulie began his speech that all of us being here makes him look good. Makes Dave look good, and that it was supposed to be PG. Then Kyle asked me to speak tonight, so sorry, Paul, I'll do my best. When we got here, Dr. Wilson pointed out just how many national championships the A. Craig Baird has had, second only to wrestling. Trevor stood up here and spoke about the 90s and how incredibly excellent the 90s were, and with all respect to Nathan Coco and company, that the 90s were the era. And then I believe I just heard the phrase unprecedented success of the early 2000s. It's fair. Undeniably, my era, the mid-2000s, was the pinnacle of Iowa debate. I believe that during my 4 years here, there was only ever one time that the University of Iowa lost an out-round at the NDT. Never mind the fact that we only debated in one out-round of the NDT. Say what you will about debate, but sorry, Paul, for the PG nomenclature. An argument may, or perhaps it taught me how to make not a foolproof argument, but it certainly taught me how to bullshit. So, in seriousness, Dave, every facet of my life, if you look at debate, or if you look at my life, has been influenced by debate, and that's probably true of everybody that's in this room right now. I wouldn't be where I was at right now without debate. It really meant everything to me. Sorry for any FCC violations on the NPR radio that may have come your way. But yeah, it really has been a lot to be able to come into this room, and I still have best friends that I talk to every day, and then I see somebody, Tyler, that I haven't seen in 15 years, and we can just pick up like it was yesterday. So just that camaraderie means a lot, and I can't say enough thanks to Paula for helping a lot, but Dave for actually teaching me most of it. So
she stole my thunder a little bit. I was going to say, just in the presence of all of y'all and talking about your accolades, I felt that an underrepresented group that should speak here is people that kind of sucked at this, but still had a great time. And I did not like learn really keen argumentative skills and then parlay them into like scholarship or law. Though it's nice to have people you can call, like if for bail or whatever. But I will say, I went from this into the field of creative writing, teaching writing, and the thing that I took away from debate that I think that this program offered was just letting me try a bunch of weird stuff. I think I was like 20 and thought I was smart, which I think happens, and was given an opportunity to disabuse myself of that notion with a lot of creative freedom. And again, it was an incredible opportunity to travel around the country and try stuff and like wear my Side of Truth hoodie while I was just saying utter nonsense. But like, but again, to be kind of taken seriously at that time. And I think that, you know, I feel in particular that in rooms full of people who were like, I mean, to be real, like way harder workers and much more causal in their reasoning, it meant a lot to me to be supported and appreciated for perhaps the things that I was okay at, like making dumb jokes, even if they were like that was my negative strategy. And, you know, to sort of parlay that into sort of feeling comfortable and confident to kind of leave behind all of this, like, you know, smart stuff that y'all do, and to just kind of go and pursue things that were of my interest. And one small Dr. Dave story in light of this that is something that I have taken perhaps more than argumentative reasoning is one night before an out round, I think at UNI, which is becoming a bit of a drinking game now, referencing it, but I was sort of like pacing the hotel hallways, getting ready, and you know, just, you know, probably should have been asleep, and Dr. Dave was like, you know, so like, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be asleep? And I'm like, well, I'm like coming up with like a really good Heidegger joke. And Dr. Dave said, you know, just sort of pausing again, sort of seeming to give credence to this, just like, why don't you lie down and think of your Heidegger jokes? And so now when I'm like really like obsessed and deeply into something utterly unnecessary, I just, you know, I lie down and work on it, and the process takes care of itself. So anyway, as with everybody else, even though I don't do anything that feels to me even remotely like debate, and I don't even really have all that much interest in like arguing or convincing people of anything or knowing things, even I really feel Iowa debate in my bones, and it's great to be here.
And I'd like to actually step back and talk about the late 2000s, which were a really transitional time for the Iowa debate team and the university system in general. It was a time that was marked by some extreme weather and some financial situations that made things difficult for the university. 2006 was a reset year for the Iowa debate program. All of the debaters from the previous year had graduated, and we were a team with all new debaters. It was a year that was marked by a start of the season where there was a tornado in the town, and the end of the year where we had an ice storm that prevented us from going to districts. And despite Fred Sternhagen's best attempts, Iowa still made it out of districts first. I thank God to this day that I did not have to get into a vehicle with Dr. Dave to drive through that ice storm with him at the wheel. In 2007, we had to leave the International Center, and we moved to the Communications Center across the river, which was then promptly flooded in the flood of 2008, where the debaters learned firsthand how painful it is to have a filing cabinet tip over and land on your foot. In 2009, we weathered the financial crisis, and Dave and Paul helped to fund some of our travel out of pocket to make travel possible that year. There was obviously a lot going on. Despite all of that, Dave maintained 4 years of perfect attendance at the NDT. He had 2 debaters who went undefeated in 4 years at the district tournament. We won freshman and sophomore nationals one of those years. You've had graduate students from that era go on to Oregon State and Pittsburgh and Baylor and Eastern Washington, which I think speaks endless amounts to the steadying force that you had on the squad through that time, and the positive effect that you had through some of the ups and downs that happen in any debate program. So I know there was a lot that happened during that era, and we had lots of success, but we were all eternally grateful for all that you did for us in that era, and just want to thank you.
I just wanted to say that the debate program has made a huge difference in my life. I didn't come to Iowa for debate. I came because I wanted to come to Iowa. And it just so happened that because I was a high school debater at Davenport West, go Falcons, with, I don't know if any of you know Harold Keller, the old HCK, God rest his soul, but master of student Congress. He said, if you go to Iowa, look up Dave Hinkstman. Well, so I went to a public debate one day, and, oh, this is cool. So I talked to Doc, and yeah, All right, come to a squad meeting. Okay. Well, soon enough, I'm fixing a couple of the computers, and yeah. I didn't go to a lot of tournaments, but I went to a lot of squad meetings and helped cut a lot of cards. And Dr. Dave has made all of the difference in my life. He is the best person you'll ever meet in your life. He actually cares, and he's probably the most educated person you'll meet in your life. A lot of my friends from high school, when I said, wait, when I went back to judge a couple of debate tournaments the next year, he's like, wait, this is your friend? He's been to Princeton, Harvard, Northwestern, and you're having a beer with this guy? I'm like, yeah, stock. And yeah, and he's been there all the way through, and he's done great for this program. And he's made a huge difference in my life, being a friend through all of my, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional, but apologize for that. But what I was taught from the debate program has made me able to deal with my business, and it's made everything great. And the debate program is something that more people should be able to access. It's really a good thing that needs more support.
My name is Sharon Kahn. I debated at Iowa from 2010 to 2014 alongside Trevor. You know, the 2010s, I think, were also very much a time of transition. When Trevor and I arrived at the University of Iowa in 2010, it was us and one senior at the time, so we were a very young but very scrappy team. I was reflecting while some of the other speakers were going, and I was actually thinking about the fact that I was one of the only women on the team for a little bit at the time. And I remember Dr. Dave actually taking me out to lunch very early on in work week before Carlos O'Kelly's, so I hadn't sat down with Dave in that context yet. But I remember him taking me out to lunch and saying, you know, you're the only girl here. If you have any trouble with these boys, you send them to me. And, you know, I think, you know, they're now some of my dearest friends still, but I think learning those lessons from Dr. Dave made all the difference and made me feel very welcome in that environment. The other thing about the 2010s that I think some people have gestured to is that it was the first year that debate really went paperless. No more were the tubs that people were dragging around, which if you ever were stuck in an airport without your tubs and the rounds were starting the next morning, you know, was maybe a very difficult situation to be in. But in a sort of sign of how the more things change, the more they stay the same, Dr. Dave could still reliably be counted on to always have paper. And it was always in an Iowa bookstore bag, every time. The last thing that I'll say about sort of my time in the 2010s was that Dr. Dave, you know, really was there for us, and Paul as well, for sort of every step along the way. We had a lot of transitions in coaching. We had a lot of, in my case, different partners that we debated with, perhaps, during that time. But the first thing that we all started out with when we got to campus was a 100-year debate reunion, our third week of classes, which, if you know, you've heard it tonight, the amount of legacy that you step into when you become an Iowa debater is immense. And when you're also prepping for Georgia State, which was our season opener that year instead of UNI, it is a lot of pressure to not let all those people down when they come back to campus. Trevor and I debated together at that tournament, and we opened our very first debate by debating the team from Emory that was the NDT finalist the year before, and had lost in that debate and had a bit of a point to prove. So I won't say much more about our record at that tournament, but I will. I said I wasn't going to say it. But what a sort of material thing that came from that is our prep for the reunion before GSU brought all of these lovely photo boards that people have been looking at. Although I do notice they took some of our photos out of them, so maybe that is a reflection on GSU a little bit. But yeah, no, I had an amazing time at Iowa, an amazing time at Iowa Debate, and a lot of that is due to Dr. Dave and to Paul and to my teammates at the time, so thank you very much.
So the previous decades have talked about the reach that the program had throughout the state of Iowa. I came here because of the reach that Dr. Dave and Iowa Debate had throughout the country. I hail from a provincial northern hamlet called Edina, Minnesota. And at the Montgomery Bell Academy, I was still undecided of where I was going to go. And my former lab leader, a Copeland Award winner from University of Georgia, came up to me and said, if you haven't considered it yet, you should consider the University of Iowa. Dr. Dave is a fine gentleman. I don't think he actually talked like that, but that's my recollection of Georgia. But I followed his advice, came on a trip to Iowa, and instantly fell in love. So to carry on Sharon's speech, every championship program runs into a little bit of adversity. Sharon and I broke the Iowa debate streak of winning districts every year, but I will say we won in the end. The Concordia team that bested us, one of those debaters is now a graduate assistant here. So who wins D4 ultimately? Iowa does. Yeah. Also, still made the NDT, by the way. Second round bids are truly where it's at. So we may not have been the champions of the national debate tournament, but we were still champions of life. No matter what the 2000s said, the 2010s had the most fun Iowa debate house. We didn't have the resources that the Cranston did in their multi-million-dollar mansion on the river, but we had the fun and the chutzpah to make it happen. Also, to just transition into the next era of the 2010s, so while we eventually came to a close with our youth movement, we did help lure in or recruit a new generation, including the former TOC champions from Iowa City West, which I think also shows how Iowa debate proliferates or helps supports the activity in high school programs in the region. And Sharon ultimately did come out on top, ending the streak of not making the NDT out rounds and making it to the octafinals in 2014. So with that, I'll pass the throne to Gio.
I was asked to do this about half an hour ago, 45. But I came up with some great things. And I think some things, when I reflect, when I hear you all speak, things that we all have in common, not remembering who we debated against, who we lost, who we beat. I remember some of those teams. But we do remember the community that we fostered, the meal money, and the food that we bought with that money. The sombrero Dr. Dave, by the way, at Carlos O'Kelly is definitely the first team building exercise for Iowa students, so it's a fond memory. I hail from the Bronx, New York, so I've probably traveled more than any of you all did to get here, because I moved, culture shock for me, but I was able to find a home at La Michoacana, which is what I think they called it in the 90s and early 2000s, a taco restaurant out of Iowa City, the east side. And it was a great time here. I single-handedly, by the way, brought back the debate tub, team building thing, the budget for the debate tub. I continued that legacy, although the 90s and the early 2000s says that it died. I kept it going. One of my fondest memories was at the MediaCom debate tournament. I think Dr. Dave, do you remember what university we went to? I think it was Grinnell, maybe? It was up north, a little further east from here. Dr. Dave and I and Chris Jackson, who's here, contrived this great idea, which Sharon would obviously approve of, which the argument was, the resolution was, whether or not on balance, social media is to blame for some of its ills, the social ills, maybe misinformation, disinformation, the things we talked about today. Dr. Dave, Chris Jackson, and I came up with the great idea that we shouldn't shoot the Facebook Messenger. Instead, we should blame, each other for making bad decisions and sharing and et cetera, et cetera. And we don't know why, but everyone went negative against us, and we just kept making this argument. And Facebook people and other social media people were there, and they ended up picking us up. We won the tournament. We got a big, it was my first time getting a check, like a big check, $1,500. I ended up paying summer school with that money. I spent a lot of time here. I had a lot of fun. The reason I tell that story is because debate is is accountable for my 15 seconds of fame, and it came in the form of a Milio's delivery that I did. I worked at Milio's, the sandwich shop, as a delivery driver. I give the food to the guy. I drive back to Milio's, and my manager says, "Were you in a debate?" The guy called back and said he saw you on TV, and he was starstruck, I guess. And it was a great time. I'm very thankful for debate. I began debate in the 7th grade, and to contextualize it, it was in 2008. So yes, y'all are getting old. No, sorry. Other than that, my debate partner Sam Gustafson and I, and Coco Christopherson and Brooke Kimbrough were honored to be the first team to break the CETA glass ceiling. You guys kept saying NDT, NDT, but the NDT didn't like me. They didn't invite me back because I was a hybrid team. So in, I think, 2018, we decided to go to the cross-examination championship. And I don't know what the whole fuzz was about. We won the tournament. It was. Let me not say that. It was a great time. It was a great time. I just don't know why y'all didn't go to CETA before we got to campus. I'm truly honored to be here to call myself an alum, standing in the same shoes and with you all. And as a lot of people have said, Dr. Dave and Paul have definitely changed the landscape of debate and aided with the critical thinking skills, the research development, the ability to articulate arguments and claims, and prepare a speech with 20 minutes and having to attentively listen to you all while doing so. Thank you.
On behalf of the 2020s group, say thank you all for building a legacy that we are so proud to stand on. Everybody in this room knows how hard debate is, and our students face those same challenges, but like everybody in this room knows, the 2020s have not been easy on anybody. Our students realized that their 2020 NDT was canceled weeks before it happened, and they realized that suddenly life was going to look very different. They were going to be the first generation of college students to complete a year entirely online, and they did it, and they did it every day with dedication and with hard work, and with so many of the values that you all helped to establish for this program, and the values that Dave has taught for generation after generation of Iowa debate. Nothing about the past 2 years has been easy, but everything that has happened, all the great success, including this past weekend at Harvard, where Iowa was among the top 10 seeds, advancing to the elimination rounds, was possible because of people who continued to work so hard to keep debate alive for this generation and for the generation to come after. And we're very proud to continue that legacy, and we're very proud to call ourselves Dr. Dave's team.